Good evening. You're watching Bullet News Today. Let's dive into tonight's top stories. Sri Lankan police mobilize 1,500 workers to enforce election propaganda rules ahead of presidential vote. In preparation for Sri Lanka's upcoming presidential election on September 21st, the police have launched a large-scale operation to remove illegal election propaganda materials from public spaces. A team of 1,500 workers has been deployed across the country, tasked with dismantling posters, cutouts, and banners that violate election laws. Each worker will be paid $1,500 per day and provided with police protection to ensure the smooth execution of this operation. This crackdown comes amid a record 39 candidates contesting the election, which is expected to result in a longer ballot paper compared to the 2019 election. The Human Rights Commission has also been involved in discussions to ensure the police adhere to operational guidelines during the campaign period. Trump enlists Tulsi Gabbard for strategic prep ahead of Kamala Harris debate. Former President Donald Trump has brought in Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democratic Congresswoman, to assist in his debate preparation as he gears up to face Vice President Kamala Harris on September 10th. Gabbard, who gained notoriety for her sharp critique of Harris during a 2019 Democratic primary debate, has joined Trump at Mar-a-Lago for practice sessions. Despite Trump's claim that he doesn't require traditional debate preparation, he has reportedly spent more time this year refining his strategy with trusted advisors like Gabbard. Her involvement underscores her ongoing alignment with Trump's base and her effectiveness in confronting Harris on the debate stage.
I just want to play this clip of you on stage with Kamala Harris from, I guess it's 4 or 5 years ago now, and ask you a very specific question about this exchange. Roll it here.
Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana.
I am proud of that work, and I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Mpox crisis escalates in Congo amid dire humanitarian conditions and new virus strain. Congo is grappling with a severe Mpox outbreak, now declared a global health emergency by the WHO due to a surge in cases, including a newly identified virus strain. The country's eastern region, where conflict has displaced millions into overcrowded camps, is at the epicenter of the crisis. The outbreak has spread to all 26 provinces, with over 17,000 cases and 500 deaths reported this year. Despite the escalating situation, Congo lacks vaccines and adequate medical resources, leaving many vulnerable populations uninformed and untreated as the virus continues to spread, threatening neighboring countries as well. Tim Walz's China ties under GOP scrutiny amid U.S.-Beijing tensions. Minnesota Governor and Democratic vice presidential nominee Tim Walz is facing criticism from Republicans over his long-standing connections with China. Walz's experiences, which include teaching in China, frequent visits, and advocacy for human rights, have become a focal point of GOP attacks, with accusations that he may be too close to Beijing. This scrutiny reflects the heightened sensitivity in U.S.-China relations, where any association with China is increasingly viewed with suspicion. Walz, however, defends his record, emphasizing his commitment to standing up against the Chinese Communist Party's actions. Mideast mediators poised for ceasefire as U.S. signals progress in Israel-Hamas talks. Amid ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, Mideast mediators are reportedly close to finalizing a ceasefire agreement. A U.S. official has indicated that negotiations have made significant strides, with logistical preparations underway for the potential release of hostages and distribution of humanitarian aid in Gaza. Talks in Qatar concluded with optimism, and negotiators are set to reconvene in Cairo next week. While the proposal bridges major gaps between the conflicting sides, tensions remain high, with both Israel and Hamas expressing reservations. The ceasefire is seen as crucial to preventing further regional escalation. Indonesia's new capital Nusantara faces uncertainty amid inauguration. Indonesia's President Joko Widodo is set to inaugurate Nusantara, the country's new capital located in Borneo, despite the city being far from completion. Conceived as a solution to Jakarta's overpopulation and congestion, the project has been plagued by funding issues, construction delays, and leadership changes. Although Jokowi will officially open Nusantara during Independence Day celebrations, Jakarta will remain the capital for now. With Jokowi's term ending in October, there is uncertainty about whether the incoming administration will prioritize completing the $29 billion project. Taiwan confronts escalating Chinese military presence near its borders. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense has reported the detection of 13 Chinese military aircraft and 7 naval vessels operating near its territory, with 12 of the aircraft crossing the median line into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, ADIZ. This escalation follows a pattern of increased military activity by China around Taiwan, particularly since former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's controversial visit in 2022. Taiwan's defense forces have responded to these incursions, continuing to monitor the situation closely. The rise in China's military maneuvers, including regular air and naval incursions, reflects its ongoing pressure on Taiwan, which Beijing considers a breakaway province. So far in August, Taiwan has tracked over 300 Chinese aircraft and around 200 ships. China's use of gray zone tactics, military activities that stop short of direct conflict, poses a growing challenge for Taiwan and raises regional tensions, highlighting the potential for further escalations as Taiwan remains vigilant in defending its sovereignty. Meth-laced candies distribute unwittingly through Auckland Food Bank. Nationwide recall underway. New Zealand police are urgently recalling 65 methamphetamine-laced candies accidentally distributed by an Auckland food bank. So far, 41 of the dangerous sweets, disguised as Rinda brand candies, have been recovered, with efforts ongoing to retrieve the remaining 24. The candies, containing up to 300 times the usual lethal dose of meth, were mistakenly included in food parcels distributed over the past 6 weeks. The alarming discovery came after a recipient reported a funny-tasting sweet, leading to testing that confirmed the presence of methamphetamine. While no one has been seriously harmed, the incident is believed to be linked to a smuggling operation gone wrong. The New Zealand Drug Foundation and Rinda Food Industries are cooperating with authorities to prevent further incidents, and stricter donation protocols are being enforced to ensure the safety of future food bank recipients. Japan on high alert as Typhoon Ampil intensifies near Tokyo. Japan is bracing for the impact of Typhoon Ampil, a powerful storm now equivalent to a Category 4 hurricane approaching the east coast near Tokyo. With winds reaching up to 212 kilometers per hour, authorities have issued evacuation advisories for nearly 404,000 people across several cities, including Mobara, Asahi, and Iwaki. The storm has already caused over 2,000 households to lose power, while major disruptions are expected in rail and air travel, with hundreds of flights canceled and bullet train services suspended. Meteorologists warn of severe weather, including heavy rain, flooding, and landslides, particularly in northern and eastern regions. While Ampil's center is predicted to stay offshore, there remains a risk of significant impact if the storm's trajectory shifts. The storm is expected to weaken by Saturday morning as it moves into cooler waters, but authorities urge continued vigilance. 16 dead, 20 abducted in Congo attacks linked to IS-associated rebels. In northeastern Congo, a series of brutal attacks by the Islamic State-linked Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, has left at least 16 villagers dead and 20 others abducted. The assaults occurred between Wednesday and Friday in the Mombasa territory of Ituri province, targeting locals, some of whom were working on their farmlands. Among those kidnapped are the mother and sister of a local government official, deepening the community's anguish. The death toll remains provisional, as the fate of the abducted remains uncertain. The ADF, originally formed in neighboring Uganda, has increasingly terrorized this region of Congo, contributing to one of the world's most severe humanitarian crises. Over 7 million people have been displaced due to ongoing violence by various armed groups vying for power and control over valuable resources. The 15,000-member UN peacekeeping mission, set to withdraw by the end of 2024, has been criticized for failing to curb the conflict. UAE joins BRICS nations to launch Center for Industrial Competences. The UAE has partnered with BRICS nations to launch a Center for Industrial Competences, aiming to enhance industrial skills and capabilities within the framework of the New Industrial Revolution, NIR. Announced at the 8th BRICS Industry Ministers meeting, the initiative will promote partnerships to address challenges and opportunities in the rapidly evolving industrial landscape. The UAE's Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology, in collaboration with the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, emphasized the significant potential for collaborative industrial progress, with BRICS nations accounting for nearly a third of the global GDP. The center will support sustainable development goals, particularly in industry, innovation, and infrastructure. It will also focus on areas such as clean technology, smart manufacturing, and medical equipment. This initiative is a step forward in the UAE's commitment to strengthening global economic ties and addressing major challenges like food security and climate change. Mediators aim to reconvene after positive Gaza ceasefire talks. Mediators from the US, Egypt, and Qatar concluded 2 days of constructive talks aimed at halting the 10-month Gaza war and securing the release of hostages. Though Hamas did not directly participate, both sides received a proposal for a potential ceasefire. The mediators plan to reconvene in Cairo next week to finalize the deal, which is seen as crucial to preventing a wider regional conflict. Amid escalating tensions and fears of further violence from Iran and Hezbollah, international diplomacy has intensified, with British and French ministers expressing cautious optimism. The war, sparked by Hamas-led attacks in October 2023, has resulted in over 40,000 Palestinian deaths, with Israel claiming 17,000 were Hamas militants. Diplomats hope a ceasefire agreement will de-escalate the situation and prevent further regional instability. Hurricane Ernesto slams Bermuda, threatening major coastal flooding. Hurricane Ernesto began battering Bermuda late Friday as the powerful Category 2 storm approached, bringing heavy winds and torrential rain. Located just 95 miles south-southwest of the British territory, Ernesto is expected to pass dangerously close to or directly over Bermuda early Saturday, with maximum sustained winds of 100 miles per hour. Authorities have closed government offices, airports, and public transportation while urging residents to finalize preparations. The storm could dump up to 9 inches of rain, with hurricane-force winds extending 75 miles from the center. Significant coastal flooding and power outages are anticipated, with 14% of customers already without electricity. The National Hurricane Center warned of dangerous surf conditions across the region, including the Bahamas and Atlantic Canada, over the coming days. Ernesto is the 5th named storm of the season, which experts predict will be above average due to record warm ocean temperatures.
Hurricane Ernesto Center never made landfall on Puerto Rico or the U.S. Virgin Islands. Yet the storm's strong winds and heavy rain knocked out power for hundreds of thousands of people, not only impacting their homes, but also businesses.
This has been really hard. This is hard for us in our daily lives and for those of us who have businesses. I am in Dorado, but on behalf of all of us in Puerto Rico, each person suffers. Their pockets suffer.
The center of the hurricane will now track near or over Bermuda on Saturday, but heavy wind gusts and torrential rain will be felt earlier on the island, which is about a third of the size of Washington, D.C.
Ernesto is going to bring a prolonged period of dangerous winds, a very heavy rainfall, the potential for flash flooding and storm surge and coastal flooding to the island.
With Ernesto continuing to move out in the Atlantic, Dr. Michael Brennan, the director of the National Hurricane Center, says large waves are also expected to impact the northern Caribbean islands as well as the east coast of the United States.
Indian Ambassador Ravi Shankar begins diplomatic mission in Ukraine. India's newly appointed ambassador to Ukraine, Ravi Shankar, officially commenced his diplomatic mission after presenting his letter of credence to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the presidential palace in Kyiv. Alongside envoys from Mexico, Italy, Slovakia, the Netherlands, and Belgium, Shankar expressed India's commitment to strengthening bilateral ties and supporting Ukraine's territorial integrity. President Zelensky, in a post on X, highlighted the importance of these new diplomatic engagements in fostering cooperation amidst ongoing global tensions. India's relationship with Ukraine, established in 1992, has seen significant growth, with India being one of Ukraine's largest export destinations in the Asia-Pacific region. This diplomatic meeting follows recent discussions between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Zelensky during the G7 summit, where both leaders emphasized the importance of peaceful resolutions to the conflict in Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to visit Israel for Gaza ceasefire talks. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to arrive in Israel on August 17th to push for a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas and to facilitate the release of hostages from Gaza. His visit comes amid intensified diplomatic efforts, supported by Egypt and Qatar, to finalize a proposal aimed at halting the conflict and ensuring the distribution of humanitarian aid in Gaza. Blinken will emphasize the need for all parties to avoid actions that could derail the ceasefire process. The conflict, which began with a major Hamas attack on October 7th, has escalated significantly, with recent tensions also involving Iran and Hezbollah. A joint statement from global leaders, including President Biden, has called for Iran to de-escalate and for urgent aid to be delivered to Gaza.
Antony Blinken is in Israel as part of a 3-day tour of the Middle East in an effort to boost support for a ceasefire in Gaza. It's the US Secretary of State's 8th trip to the region since the war between Israel and Hamas began last October. The visit comes as the United States asked the UN Security Council to vote on a draft resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. It's also calling for the release of the hostages still held by the group. Earlier, Mr. Blinken told reporters in Cairo that Egypt has been speaking with Hamas as recently as today.
The only party that has not accepted, the only party that's not said yes, is Hamas. That's who everyone's waiting on. That's who the Palestinians in Gaza are waiting on. It's who the Israelis are waiting on. It's who the hostages and the hostage families are waiting on. Does Hamas want to end this conflict, end this war that it started, or not? We'll find out. But it's clear that virtually the entire world has come together in support of the proposal. And the only open question is, will Hamas say yes?
Pakistan on high alert after first Mpox case detected. Pakistan's health ministry has reported the country's first case of Mpox, prompting immediate action to tighten airport security and passenger screening. The patient, who recently traveled from a Gulf nation, is currently undergoing virus sequencing to determine the specific strain of Mpox. In response, border health services have enhanced surveillance and precautionary measures at all entry points to prevent further spread. Although initially 3 cases were reported in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, this was later corrected to a single confirmed case. The new Mpox variant, which appears to spread more easily, has raised global concerns following recent outbreaks in Africa and a case in Sweden. Despite these developments, the World Health Organization has advised against travel restrictions, emphasizing the need for robust health monitoring instead.
New clade of Mpox in eastern DRC, its detection in neighboring countries that had not previously reported Mpox, and the potential for further spread within Africa and beyond is very worrying.
Trump's financial disclosures reveal $1 million in cryptocurrency, gold bars, and media investments. Newly released financial disclosures from former President Donald Trump reveal significant holdings and unusual sources of income. Trump reports owning between $1 million and $5 million in Ethereum cryptocurrency and up to $250,000 in gold bars. His financial portfolio includes extensive real estate, golf courses, and media investments, notably in Truth Social, where his 114 million shares are valued at over $2 billion. The documents also show earnings from book royalties, a Bible edition endorsement, and NFTs. Despite his wealth, Trump faces substantial debts, including $50 million related to litigation and ongoing appeals. His golf courses and Mar-a-Lago resort generate substantial revenue, highlighting the breadth of his business empire amidst his current presidential campaign. MasterCard to cut 1,000 jobs globally as part of restructuring effort. MasterCard Inc. plans to reduce its global workforce by 3%, equating to about 1,000 positions by September 30th. This move is part of a broader restructuring aimed at realigning regional operations and business strategies to foster growth and invest in future opportunities. Despite strong second quarter results that exceeded Wall Street expectations, the company faces increased operating expenses and anticipates a $190 million restructuring charge for Q3. The decision impacts the firm's 33,400 global employees, with a significant portion based outside the U.S. The job cuts are expected to streamline operations and shift resources toward areas with higher growth potential. Bangladesh interim chief Yunus pledges free elections amid reforms and unrest. Bangladesh's interim leader Mohammad Yunus, addressing the Voice of Global South Summit, reaffirmed the interim government's commitment to conducting free and fair elections. Yunus, who assumed office following the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on August 5th, emphasized the need for significant reforms across the electoral system, judiciary, local government, media, economy, and education. The interim government's formation comes amid widespread violence and political unrest, including attacks on minorities. Yunus highlighted the widespread public engagement in the reform process, symbolized by youth-led graffiti promoting a new democratic vision for Bangladesh. He invited international observers to visit Dhaka to witness these transformative efforts firsthand. Nearly 650 killed in Bangladesh unrest amid calls for independent investigation. A UN report reveals that nearly 650 people have died in Bangladesh's recent violence between July 16 and August 11. The unrest, triggered by anti-discrimination student protests, has led to widespread extrajudicial killings, arbitrary arrests, and severe human rights violations. The report, released from Geneva, highlights the deaths of protesters, bystanders, journalists, and security personnel, with thousands injured and hospitals overwhelmed. The UN calls for a thorough, impartial investigation into these violations, as well as a restoration of law and order. The violence intensified following the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on August 5th, with continued unrest including attacks on minority communities and reprisals against political figures. The UN High Commissioner emphasized the need for comprehensive reforms and pledged a visit to Bangladesh to support the transition and address human rights concerns. That's all for now. Stay tuned to Bullet News Today for more updates.